Hello golfers, Glen Osborne again. Putting. In the putting techniques that you see with almost all golfers, you're going to see three moves, or you'll see one definitely. You'll see the third one that I'll talk about quite handily. The second move you don't see very well, but it has to happen. Alright, first move is, and I'll put over the top of the ball just to keep it here as a target. Alright, the first move, you must always have a little turn. However you do it, leaning away forward or standing upright, you're going to turn. It has to be done. If you block the turn off, how do you move the putter? Wrist. They used to do this. Took a lot of practice. Distance was the problem without practice. Quite straight. The only other way to move, if you block your turn off, is try to move your arms. There's a lot of inhibition in this. This arm runs into your ribs immediately as you move. Moves into your ribs. The ribs slow things down or spoil the harmony, the rhythm. On the return, without the turn, you start pulling with your arm. This arm runs into your ribs, kills the follow through, which you will need. Alright, so we have a turn. You will watch for the turn. When the pros are putting, when your friends are putting, amateurs, and by the way, this is dedicated to beginners, amateur golfers, struggling golfers, high handicap golfers. Don't teach them this. There's too much complication. Alright, you have a turn. Have a turn. What else? Oh yes, they want you to put two 2x4s or pieces of wood down. Almost as narrow together as the width of the putter. Just a little bit further apart than the width of the putter. The boards would be about where my fingers are. Alright, you're turning. If you turn and don't do anything, the putter comes up and in. I'll show you this one. Up and in. It hits a 2x4 right away. So, what do? We're turning. At the same time, we must reach our arms, and I'll exaggerate this. Reach our arms away from contact with your ribs up here. Right away, this creates a free floating situation right at your shoulders. As soon as your arms get away out hanging from your shoulders with no contact with the solid rib spine mechanism, free floating, you've got a problem. The shoulder is not an anchored socket like a knee. The shoulder is a freer floating type of a socket with many muscles holding it in place. Muscles that work in all kinds of different directions. So you're out here floating, you're turning, and you're trying to train one set of muscles to move your arms out from your body, back into your body, and out from your body. to keep between those 2x4s or on the line of this carpet. Show it here again and exaggerated. See how I'm exaggerating. Now in miniature, when you do this in miniature with a putt takeaway that far and a follow through that far, you don't see this as much movement. In fact, you would think, well, what's this Glen guy talking about? There is movement under your clothing. As soon as there's a bit of tiny movement, you lose containment here. You get into free floating. Your elbows could go out or whatever, but a whole bunch of muscles, including your shoulder blades and how they're attached to the shoulder. You get movement there, you're free floating. It takes so much practice to get the feeling of this out, in, out motion. It takes so much practice, and then you're going to lose the feeling of it at times. You come to play golf and you got a slight nose cold, you lose some of the sensations. So the turn's easy. I'll explain that more in my next video. You got to turn, you've got to synchronize the turn with this in, this out, in, out motion, or synchronize vice versa. The turn always rules as soon as it begins. In any handling of the golf club, the turn rules. Anything you do with other movements has to synchronize and be in harmony with the turn. All right. So we're trying to synchronize two basic movements. Keeping the putter between two 2x4s or on the putting line while turning. That's two movements. However, this out, in, out involves or can involve a whole bunch of other potential moves that you're trying to block off. You're blocking a lot of wobbles and wiggles out while trying to execute two movements. Pretty hard. Third movement, keeping the putter face square on target as you follow the line or stay or in between two boards while turning. Keeping the putter face square. As soon as your arms get away from your body, free floating at the shoulders, or you're fighting to control it, you're actually turning your hands, your forearms with the supinator elbow turning muscles that turn your hands, and whether you like it or not, depending on your arm angle at the elbows, your supinator, your rotator cuff in the shoulder will also turn. Or you'll be blocking one of those rotations off to maximize the rotation to keep the putter face square as you do the other two movements. That's a whole lot of movements. 1, 2, 3, 4 rotator muscles that you've got to work in sync. Both of them are going to get involved, or you have to do a lot of work to block the shoulder rotator off or the elbow supinator off. It takes work, which you shouldn't have to do. It takes a lot of practice to try and sync these. I'd like to tell you one other thing about this. This is powered. Turning away from the ball, turning through it is a power move, or these power muscles for the turns can also be very delicate and precise. But they control. They rule your putting stroke. So, here you are, turning away from the ball. For right-handers, you're turning to your right. Left-handers, you're turning to your left. Here's what you're doing. You're rotating your hands and putter face in the opposite direction. Try and do this in a big move. Very, very weak. It's a weak move in the opposite direction of your controlling turn. This is trouble. You go to here, you're starting to weaken. Ever so tiny, but when you want to hit this ball, the back of the ball perfectly, to make it roll, and to be on line on tricky greens, you cannot make a mistake. Mistakes happen if you lose rigid focus. A few of the great putters can do this. They just seem to have this built in, this sense. But even they can goof up a putt. You'll see great putters goof up a 3-foot putt, and they look terrible doing it. Well, they goofed up in one of these movements. Very hard to do. And then to follow through, you hear people talking about following through with the putter. The follow through. The follow through. These movements, the arms away from the body in the follow through, while you're turning your hands the opposite direction to your turn, things get weak, and the subconscious senses that this is going to happen before contact is made, and it starts trying to add a little bit of oomph as it goes into the weakening movement. And this could be a weakening movement that couldn't even be measured, perhaps, unless you got some expensive scientific equipment to pick up how weak, but it is happening. And you don't want any change of body muscular activity that you've honed and practiced in your practice green drills. You get walking around a golf course. These guys, the pros, do 18 holes 4 days in a row after they practice other days in the week. For amateur golfers without golf muscles, you could go practice on the putting green. By the time you get to the first green, walking it, you're already getting weak and tired, enough to affect a little wiggle or jiggle in the putting stroke. Turn, arms out, in, out. Putter face square, turn the wrong way to the turn the wrong way to the turn. A whole bunch of movements. you want to develop a putt stroke